Parents of Reddit, what did your child's school do that made you say you can't be serious? Our elementary school, same one my wife and I went to, has a nice hill next to the playground that leads down to the outfield of a little league field. Kids for decades have been rolling down that hill during recess. Not allowed to do that anymore. Not allowed to run excessively during recess anymore either. I wish I was making any of this up. Sadly it's true. I wish my school had implemented a no running to excess policy. I can't function as an adult now. Sometimes I just start sprinting through grocery stores until I end up knocking over shopping carts and end caps. I have been hit by cars 3 times from dashing across the street at random. My wife left me last Christmas because I was at her parents' house and suddenly just bolted out the back door. They found me 6 hours later over 15 miles down the road. I am 5 feet 8 inches and only weigh 95 pounds because on average I burn 5k calories a day from running. I can't sleep some nights because every 5 seconds I have to dash across the room. There are so few support groups for this terrible addiction. My mum was furious with my infant in junior school because 2 of the teachers would not let me write with my left hand. They forced me to write with my right hand, which was impossible. I was ambidextrous. Or something. The teachers in my preschool and kindergarten got mad that I kept switching, so they made me write only with my right hand. Now I can write really well with my right hand. Pool, drawing, calculators, toothbrushes, and Japanese I can do with my left. What little Japanese I can remember. Took it in high school. Close bracket. My mom flipped her shitty when she came to pick me up from preschool around 1980 and found my left arm tied behind my back. The teacher thought it perfectly acceptable to force me to use my right hand. My dad grew up in the 60s. Learned to write in a Catholic school. They hit him with a ruler every time he tried his left. My dad is now right-handed. But my nephew is a lefty. Religion can't beat genetics apparently, lol. My brother was told not to use his left hand when he was younger and in a Sunday school type class by a teacher who considered left-handers the devil's work. Southern Baptist and Old Testament teachings were fun as a kid. My mom flipped her shitty when she found out. Told off the teacher. And now he is proficient with his left dominant hand. Please limit the pieces of fruit in the lunchbox to 1 item. We are trying to reduce sugar intake for our young people. Double quote. It also got 1. Children are not allowed to bring their own sweets because the ones who have none could become jealous. I'm a niece. I worked somewhere where I, an adult, ate too much fruit for them. We were also not allowed to throw garbage away. I ain't even kidding. I threw an apple core away and they made me pick it out and take it home. I quit a week later. Because FCK fat. My older brother was bullied in middle school, late 70s. My parents asked school staff to do something about it multiple times, but what they did was shrug. And my brother kept getting bullied. So my dad did some thinking and searching and found out that a retired sheriff was training kids to get fit and learn to box. He super stressed to my brother that his was only for defending himself, and then after a few weeks of my brother's training, made an appointment with the school principal. He told the principal something like, "I asked you to protect my son and you didn't. So I signed my son up for boxing lessons and told him that if it happens again and he breaks a bully's nose, I will buy him a new bicycle." And walked out on a flabbergasted principal. He didn't get a bicycle, but he also didn't get bullied again. This would not fly today. Obviously. They forgot my 5-year-old daughter on the bus the second day of kindergarten. The daycare called. That's where the school bus dropped her off so I could pick her and her sister up together after work, to ask if she was sick because she never got off the bus. I freaked and said no. Called the school. They said they didn't know where she was. They called me back 15 minutes later saying she had fallen asleep on the bus and didn't get off at her stop. The bus had gone back to the depot and parked. It was August. In Georgia. Edited to add, she no longer goes to that school. Edited again to add, I was 37 weeks pregnant at the time, so how this didn't send me into preterm labor I will never know. Luckily everyone ended up okay, but we promptly took her out of that school. Similar thing happened to me. I was in summer school and 6 years old. My summer school group got on the bus, but a substitute driver was driving that day. They were supposed to take us from one elementary school to another. Instead they kept asking us, "Where do you live?" I was 6. All I knew was that my house was yellow. The sub ended up dropping us all off at the high school's parking lot. I remember it because I, with a bunch of 6 to 9-year-olds, scared and alone in a mysterious parking lot in the rain. Then while we were standing there, another bus driver pulls up and goes, "What are you guys doing here?" and gives us a lift to the school. The only reason my mom knew about it is when I got home later I told her about it. My mom was so upset. She called the school and the sub was fired, and my regular bus driver called to personally apologize. Apparently they told the sub over the radio not to drop us off at the high school, and she did anyway. I was constantly forgotten into the bus as a kid because I was too quiet. I was the last kid to be dropped off before the bus went to pick up the high school students. I was already a shy kid. And now in a completely empty bus. Who do you want me to chat with? Bus driver? Luckily the bus drove back in front of my house coming back from the high school. So it wasn't that much of a big deal. There was a heartbreaking story of a boy was left in the school bus in our city. The boy was forgotten until the end of the day. They only found out the boy when the class was over and children came to the bus to go home. No one knew. Teachers, drivers, the assistant teacher in the bus. The poor boy was dead. It's just beginning of the year. And that's international school, in which the tuition fee is expensive in my country. People have to work hard to send children there with the hope of better education and quality. I couldn't hold my tear when I saw the dad broke down when he saw his son's dead body. Dude. A kid from where I come got left behind in the school bus. Which was more like a small van. Mind you, this is an international school, which is only for the rich. Not public ones. While the van, with only the kid in it, was parked in a crowded university campus. The kid failed to get out and passed away due to lack of oxygen. This story got on national news. His family made it a big thing to the press. But since that school has rich and powerful people having its back, the whole thing died down like nothing happened. Poor kid. Rest in peace. Not me. But a co-worker was talking about this today. Her daughter and her schoolmates are being assigned work to do during lunch breaks. They are doing the Zoom call classrooms. She said her daughter is skipping lunch sometimes because she's working on the assignment. The girl is 9. 32nd graders is quite a large class. There's a marked difference in how you can teach and engage with students and their families between a class of, say, 20 and a class of 30. That doesn't mean the grade 1/2 split was a good solution. Probably. They should have hired an additional 2nd grade teacher. But that's expensive. And most school districts are barely able to make payroll because of how poorly they're funded. And how administrators fail to prioritize spending on actual staff. I was in 3rd grade. And my homework was an anatomy crossword puzzle. I was unable to successfully finish this homework because, well, I was 7-8 years old. The teachers notified my mom that I may have a learning disability because the other students were able to finish it. My mom laughed and said, "You really think their parents didn't just do this ridiculous assignment for them?" Double quote. I'm now 30 and still can't complete a crossword puzzle. Obligatory not me, but my mother went to a Catholic school and was taught by nuns. 5 years old, she put her hand up and asked to use the bathroom. She was told she was to stay in her seat. And that she could hold it or wet her pants. My mother left the class and walked home. It all spilled out. The nun had put mum in the bin and told the other children to throw rubbish at her because she was trash. My grandmother was furious. And enrolled mum into another school. The priest showed to the house and excommunicated my family from the Catholic Church when Nana refused to send mum back. Best bit. New priest years later showed to the house to apologize and invite my family back into the church. My nana sent him packing. TLDR excommunicated from the church when my mother refused to wet her pants at school. My first year teacher told me of writing in cursive before the school had taught us how. My grandmother went ballistic when she found out. The same teacher gave me shti because she thought I was spelling my name incorrectly. There's about 3 or 4 different ways of spelling my name. And she could have easily checked the register which would have had my name on it. Again. My grandmother went ballistic. When my son was about to start 6th grade, the school insisted on putting him in a life skills class, which is where they put all the severely disabled students to teach them skills that they can use later on when getting a job, etc. My son is disabled. He is on the spectrum as well as having ADHD and some other things, but not that disabled. Me. He doesn't need to be in that class. He's too smart for that. School. But we know better. Me. But did you not read the report from his latest hard meeting and his IEP? School. Yes, and we disagree with that. Me. Fine. He's in there for 1 semester. 2nd semester comes around and he's not in that class. It was 1 period a day for him. School. Yeah. He totally doesn't belong in that class. We're sorry. Me. I told you also. Morons. They had an art project which went really well. The kids were really proud of their work and parents were impressed. So did they let the kids take their artwork home to be admired by the family? Hell no. They decided to put the projects in an art show and make parents buy their children's work from the school as a fundraiser. Bear in mind that hadn't been the deal from the start. They just decided to hold a bunch of 8-year-olds' work hostage because it was apparently surprisingly good. Some parents objected to this on principle and demanded they shouldn't have to pay to enjoy the fruits of their child's labor. Their children's work was not included in the art show, but hung up in the office where children weren't allowed to go, and grudgingly released once all the other works were sold. Our family had fallen on hard times and couldn't afford to pay $20 for our kids' own intellectual property, so had to explain that her art wasn't going to be in the show with all her friends to show off to their families, but would be hidden away with all the other poor kids' work. During the few months of online learning in the spring, my sports teacher required us to take video evidence of us doing the stuff. They never told us how long it was supposed to be, and when my parents heard that they said you can't be serious that the teacher requires you to upload a 1H video for them and use all the network in the house for the whole day. We had 3 people needing internet for online school work. Not a parent, but a former student myself. Once I was caught swapping classrooms with a friend of mine. School thought we were kind of skipping class. They decided the punishment for that was to suspend me from class for a day. So they called my parents to tell them that I got caught skipping class and that I would be suspended for that. To what my mom replied, "So you're giving him exactly what he wants?" They turned back on the suspension after that, lol. I went to a pretty strict Christian Baptist school my whole life. It was fine when I was little, even though I was shamed for celebrating Halloween and made fun of cause my mom and dad smoked. But when I got older I started to rebel, lol. Anyway, my friends and I were writing Harry Potter fanfic and it was a little spicy. We got caught and my dad actually met with the principal and was like, "Why am I here? They are 16. Double quote. I got a Saturday detention for writing fanfic. When I was in 7th grade, our final assignment in chemistry class was to invent 5 elements. I knew what elements were, so I just couldn't wrap my head around it. By the time I realized that it was shti like invisibilium, makes you invisible, it was too late to do it. It was basically an art creative writing assignment, and it was worth half our grade, so I flunked rec class. My mom was so pissed. She fought like hell, but the school refused to budge. Not a parent, but back when I was in 5th grade and getting death threats on the daily for no reason, my mom was justifiably upset. She talked to my teacher, who said she wasn't going to do anything. My mom proceeded to talk to the principal of the school, who told her it would be too much paperwork to do anything. That was 7 years ago, and I still remember how dumbfounded and angry she was. This actually happened to my little brother, 15 at the time. He was a troubled kid. tried to act cool, smoked cigs, drank alcohol, pretended sometimes, and said he used drugs like weed, even though he didn't. He got tested multiple times and there were no traces of any sort of drugs in his body. He just wanted to be cool, I guess, so he lied about these to be with the cool kids. Now, so my brother is really into plants and gardening. It's his passion and he is amazing with the knowledge and raising plants. He wants to own a flower boutique when he is older. In my country around this age, the school counselor helps kids to find a school to go after this one. My brother told the counselor that he wants to go to a school for gardening. The counselor had the audacity to question his reason and said, "It's not for you." She said, "I bet you want to learn how to grow weed and start selling it." So no. Weed is illegal here. My father was present and was absolutely shocked. Everyone knew that it's his dream to be a gardener and this lady thought that he doesn't seem fit enough for the job. Well, my mum called the school and counselor lady was fired. Never tell kids their dreams are nonsense. My little sister was in elementary school. I was the one that picked her up that day. Apparently you can get detention for jumping into a puddle during recess. Not as a parent, but my high school eliminated academic awards because it was somehow unfair on the kids who did not get one. They kept athletic awards. Of course. Not a parent, but I'm 16 years older than my youngest sibling. He goes to school in SC. And you know what his backwards school did? They took away spelling words tests. I'm so pissed. They literally said all these kids have smartphones with autocorrect. We don't need spelling words. I was so, and still am, pissed. They literally said all these kids have smartphones with autocorrect. We don't need spelling words. I was so, and still am. Online learning for the past few months. Return to physical school was just last week. My son is in pre-K and didn't do online lessons. So he's been in class 5 days for like 3 hours a day. They have no school next week for progress reporting and parent conferences. I mean, my parents didn't really give a shit as long as I would come home so they could abuse me at the end of the day, but one incident does come to mind. There was a bad snowstorm. Almost every school in the state was closed because the roads were absolutely horrible. All the surrounding schools closed but not my school. Not even delayed regular start time and end time. 3 buses crashed because the roads were 90% ice. And even after all that, the brand new superintendent was like, "Well, tough luck, y'all are considered absent, be here on time tomorrow." And the next day even more schools were closed. But yet again we didn't even have a delay and again more buses crashed. Then finally the board gave us 1 day off. The kids whose buses crashed were still considered absent for those days, but at least we got 1 day off. To my knowledge, they still have the same superintendent, so my guess is if it's bad enough this year, there's gonna be even more crashes and possibly even death. But it's obvious no one gives a shit. If my mom were alive, this is what would have made her say. "You can't be serious." In 7th grade, 1982-3, I wore a feather alligator clip in my hair to school. I had bought it from the Midway swap meet the weekend prior and I thought it looked so beautiful in my long hair. School office lady saw me walking by and ushered me in. She made me remove my clip and told me I couldn't have drug paraphernalia. I did not know WTF she was even talking about. Then she held it up to her nose and sniffed it. She says, "You know, this is a roach clip. It's used to smoke marijuana joints." I said, "No, I did not know that." "I'm surprised you do." She kept my clip. Bitch. For Father's Day, the kindergarten had donuts and tea with the dads if they came in. Most of them did. The kids that didn't have dads, or dads that did not show up, were told they had to act as waiters and take the orders of the kids and dads who showed up. My kid is 3 and goes to daycare. I went in to pick him up and the teacher tells me there was an incident and I needed to fill in a form. This is typical for scrapes and bumps, so I start reading the document. There was something about a fence and throwing and I'm having trouble making sense of it and ask the teacher for more info. It turns out a group of kids were trying to throw stuff over the fence. She then sees my perplexed look and adds I wouldn't be too worried about it. The kids should have been better supervised. And I'm just impressed he cleared the 7-foot fence. For snack. We sent an OT bar thing with my 5 years old. No nuts, but label says made in a factory that uses nuts. It was confiscated and an email sent round everyone saying no nuts or items made in an environment with nuts as they have an extremely allergic child. My position was no problem at all. But if that was the case, you should have bloody well told us before. They f***ing changed math. I always felt great about math. I am even an engineer now. But I had to tutor someone in Common Core math. It makes no sense, and if you don't do the exact same way as the teacher, it is wrong. It was probably more of a struggle for me than the person I was tutoring. I'm not a parent but have a story from when I was a student. We had a teacher who had tenure and got away with a lot of things that were borderline and eyebrow raising. It came to a head when he started calling students little cunts when they were acting up. The school said they wouldn't be taking any action because the teacher was expressing a personal opinion and it didn't impact the education experience. A lot of parents said, "Excuse me. What the FCK? Are you serious?" The superintendent is making $500 KE working less than 20/HRS a week. We also have a truancy officer making over $250 KE to drive around in his Lexus. Then they raise my school taxes every year. I currently pay over $8,600 just in school taxes for a subpar education that compelled us to move our kid to private school. Because the public school isn't teaching math or science. And because we have 6th graders with a 3rd grade reading level. In high school we were required to do a home economics class for 1 term. Basically a cooking class divided into 1 small test and 1 large practical that was cooking a 3-course meal. When it came to doing the practical, we were divided randomly into groups of 5. On the day of the practical, a member of my group left all the aprons behind, so the entire group was disqualified. I failed the class for that term and my year mark took a giant knock because somebody else didn't do their work. My daughter's primary school used to have an end of year celebration. Each year group would sing a song. There were food stalls. Parents would bring picnic blankets and chairs and just chill and celebrate the fact we'd all survived another year. Incredibly, there was also a stall selling wine and beer. Or you could bring your own and drink however much you f***ing liked. Then they banned alcohol entirely from the event. You can't be serious. Double quote. Middle school, 12-14-year-olds. Tried to implement a naked program where kids would have to go to class naked 1 week out of the year in order to promote body acceptance and healthy views of sexuality and anatomy. I think the logic was that if they see what real people, including their peers, look like, they will be less inclined to experiment and will be less influenced by fake supermodels in media that promote an unhealthy body image. The idea didn't get past the planning stages, thankfully. My mom pulled me out of a private Baptist school right before I was going to middle school. Her friend would have been my 6th grade teacher. That woman was cheating on her husband, not with anybody at the school. The principal found out somehow and sent a letter home with the kids to hand to their parents. The letter went into details about the affair, names of everybody involved, and how because of this, they were going to fire the teacher. My mom put me in public school after that. Not a parent, but I was a live-in nanny for a nice while for this family. It was just the youngest girl's birthday, so in her lunch I gave her some leftover birthday cake as her special treat. Along with the rest of her lunch, which consisted of, I think it was chicken and rice, long time ago, fruit and cucumbers which she loved. Lol. When I went to pick her up from the bus drop off, she handed me a note from her school advising me to prepare more healthy alternatives for her lunch and pretty much reprimanding me. I was speechless and then annoyed. Like, it was just a little extra cake. With healthy options too. And they didn't know they were writing to me. They addressed it to the mom, but she just gave it to me cause the parents weren't home until super late. It still aggravates me to this day. First of all, I'm not a parent, and second, I live in Sweden. So when my social subjects teacher and other schools Started influencing the students' political views by basically talking other countries' leaders and just saying stuff that is outright wrong and purposefully misinterpreted to fit what they want to believe by the teacher. Both me and my parents reacted. Keep in mind this teacher is basically loved by all but me because I over and over again get mistreated and treated differently than all the other students in a negative way. A kid was constantly picking on my stepson, pushing him around, that sort of thing. One day he came up to my kid and shoved him to the ground. Son stood up and punched the kid in the face and gave him a bloody nose. The school wanted to give my kid 1 week's detention and the other kid 1 day detention because you shouldn't meet violence with violence. We yelled at the head teacher asking how the FCK that was fair. That the one time my kid stood up for himself, he got punished worse than a serial arsehole bully. We told her that for every day she gave our kid detention we would throw him a celebration party when he got home and reinforce that what he did was right. In the end their punishments got flipped and he never bothered my kid again. Chapstick was considered OTC drugs and the kids could not carry it. My sons would have raw lips in the winter and would have to see the nurse at recess to get Vaseline on Q-tip for relief. Finally, when they were in older grades I taught them to hide it in their pencil bag and get a little on their finger when the teacher was not looking. Participants are my mom and brother. Brother is in high school and they are doing health class during pay. Coach decides showing a Charles Manson documentary with proper curriculum. First half one day. Brother comes home and mentions it to my mom. My mom lit into the principal apparently. Small town and they were friends but she let him have it. The next day no second half of Charles Manson documentary. This is my story. My parents were pissed. We were playing Kahoot in French class, and I jokingly nickname myself Digbick. The teacher gets pissed but doesn't know who did it. Somehow Digbick climbed to the top of the leaderboard in one question. Because I joined late, after the Kahoot I tell my best friend it was me. I give him permission to tell one more friend. He tells his best friend who is shitty at keeping secrets. Suddenly that kid tells others and it spreads. Apparently, some dumbass snitched and I get taken to the principal's office. I tell my parents what happened and how the principal said that if it happened again they will suspend me. My mom honestly couldn't care less about the name and was mad they were making such a big deal. My dad just laughed his ass off at the name. My school tried to make me do an after school club once a week. Did it once. Walked home in the rain and had tons of bruises. Didn't have to do it again for the rest of the year after I told my mum. They taught addition of fractions wrong. You know, with multiplication of fractions you multiply the numerators together to get the new numerator and do the same for the denominator? Well, they taught that addition was the same except you add the numerators. The teacher couldn't understand why I was so annoyed and said it's just to get them familiar with numbers. Nonsense. My daughter's teacher subtracted marks from her speech for not making eye contact with the audience. She is autistic and has an IEP for accommodations for her autism. Not a parent, but back when I was in the 9th grade, 2007 I think, we had a careers class. For our big assignment, all the guys were to create a 5-year career plan, and all the girls were to plan a wedding. My mom called the school to complain, so they changed it so either gender could do either assignment. Gave my son detention for protecting another child that was being kicked in the head and chest by another student. Even though the one being kicked had cystic fibrosis. It still makes me angry. Not a parent, but it happened to me. My religious education teacher would grade us based on drawings we did. Even the slightest effort would get you the highest grade possible. I was the only kid getting lower grades. I asked why and she told me that's because my drawings were too good and wanted me to draw something in front of her to prove that I was the person who made them. Not a parent, but do remember a time. I was quite a trouble kid. Just got my work done fast and wanted to talk to everyone. Mom came for an principal's meeting. We sit down and her first words were, if you could go ahead and put him on Ritalin it would make it easier on us. Switched schools next day. Happened while I was a student, but I had severe seasonal allergies when I was younger, still have the allergies. but they aren't as bad, and carried an EpiPen. Well, the school's zero tolerance drug policy meant I couldn't carry it on my person. It had to stay in the nurse's office, and if I needed it I could go get it. You can probably already guess what's wrong with that logic. I told them if I ever actually needed it, I wouldn't be in any state to make it to the nurse in time for her to find the damn thing and use it on me. They told me if I kept being disrespectful I'd get written up and possibly suspended. Bullshit. I found out later that they even keep inhalers for kids with asthma with the nurse too. In the statewide standardized tests, the schools and pupils are ranked by improvement percentile. So my daughter came home with a disappointing ranking, dead middle at 50% and large font. My daughter always boasts how easy her classworks were, so I asked her to explain. Her reply was, "Dad, I can't improve at 99% percentile." Buried in the smallest fine print, she scored highest percentile 2 years in a row. Several years ago my daughter was an 8th grade cheerleader and they were required to wear their uniforms to school on game days, whether home game or away game. They traveled to away games directly from school and did not come home first. Imagine my surprise when I showed up at the away football game at 6 p.m. that evening to find my daughter cheerleading on the sidelines in her uniform with a highly visible and distinct blood stain on her skirt. She had an accident very typical for middle school girls and had asked the office to call me for a change of clothes. They did not allow her to call me and she'd been told that she had to wear her uniform and she didn't have a cell phone to call me with. They weren't allowed at school in those days. The school made no effort to contact me so that I could give her a change of clothes for a class while I washed and dried her skirt. Nor did a teacher dig into the uniform closets to pull out a spare skirt for her to change into. She was subjected to a level of humiliation that I can only imagine, but she showed a brave face and refused to let it break her. She marched in band for her freshman through senior years and was not interested in cheerleading after that year. They lost her trust and my respect. And I've been pissed off at that school secretary, principal, and cheerleading coach ever since. I would have thought that at least one teacher would have intervened. My daughter sprained her ankle. The same ankle she has sprained before while dancing. We still have her crutches and wraps, so we used those and sent her to school. She goes to school at a 4-story building, so I told her to get the elevator pass. The nurse at the school called me and said she needed a doctor's note for the crutches. What? Why does she need a note if her mom is telling the school she needs them? No, she can't use them unless she has a note. WTF. So I had to take off of work to take her to the DR. To get a note. I can answer for them, I'm my district. Virtual students didn't get a full break. Also, the head at virtual school is the flipping tennis coach. And just my world history teacher is doing the bare minimum. A positive story. My kid was having learning issues in school. After a couple of years of trying this and that, the school system hired an outside consultant on their dime. The consultant did a study of their teaching practices and basically threw them under the bus. My kid goes to a private school now on their dime and is doing great. We just picked up the 8th, 9th and 10th workbooks for my kindergartner doing distance learning. This is in addition to 3 different website-based daily activities, several paper packets and 120 minutes day on Zoom. I am a teacher of the same age kids and have begged them to stop sending home so many things. If there are so many books that the teacher mom cannot decipher what pages are needed, there are too many books for a 5-year-old to manage. Not a parent, but I still have a story. Back in the days when the gifted students would be pulled out for their own lessons, I was pulled out during my 1st grade class. On this day we had a choice. Paint a picture of roses for Mother's Day, or play Magic School Bus on the computer. I chose to play Magic School Bus on the computer. Well, apparently that was the wrong choice, because my gifted teacher told my mother. My mother proceeded to chew her out, reasoning that I was a small child. Of course I'm going to want to play a video game. I dropped my daughter off at school in the morning. It was raining exceptionally hard as well. When I pulled up I had her backpack on. She had to return the digital learning box from home quarantine. Teachers are lined up out front to assist children in. This woman is wearing a hooded trench coat, rain jacket and holding the planet's largest umbrella. She doesn't open the door. I lean back to press it open and hold it. My daughter at 5 isn't strong enough to carry the box alone. The teacher goads her to carry it, saying someone at the door can assist. All while allowing rain to come down on her. Not even extending the umbrella to cover her. I wrote a pretty scathing email. Are your teachers so scared of COVID that you can't assist in any way whatsoever? Because I've been taking care of COVID patients in the intensive setting from the beginning and I'm fine. You can be rational and help her. Wear your mask and clean your f***ing hands. The school newspaper that I got from the principal's secretary's desk had a feature article about a student explaining why he liked oral sex. Big smile on his face in the picture. From my mom about my old school. There was a shooting threat and the school kept emailing and calling parents that it was a joke by a student. No real danger. That they had to send us to school. There was apparently a known date that this joke was supposed to happen. So they demanded we all come. And that there was 100% no real danger. But cops still guarded every side of the building and every door that day. Let's just say my mom had no faith in my school after that and had a very hard time ever sending me back. Not me. But my dad ripped my history teacher a new one because I got in trouble for not doing my homework in 10th grade due to one of my best friends trying to kill herself the night before. The teacher humiliated me to the point of almost tears in front of the class. I got up and walked out because I had enough. Called my dad. And he called the teacher during lunch break, yelling at him the whole time. 2 years before this, that same teacher thought it'd be fun to bully my older brother and had the same outcome. Plus an in-person meeting with both of my parents and the superintendent. Not a parent. But this is bull. I got sick and threw up blood. Instead of being sent home sick, I was dragged back to the classroom and told to clean up my mess. And I was suspended for kicking a trash can. Some kid threw a rock at my son's head and cut his really bad. Said kid was suspended for 3 days and so was my son. My son, who was walking by and got hit with a rock and bleed so badly it soaked his shirt and pants, was suspended because zero tolerance. That reminds me of the time I got bullied in 3rd grade and I was repeatedly suspended for making myself a victim and asking to be bullied, and the people who bullied me, most of which were the actual school staff, never got any punishment of any kind. No chocolate of any kind. Even chocolate chips. They can have pizza every Friday. Use special snacks as rewards. And can have the exact same thing without a chocolate chip, not to mention the hot lunches have things like healthy brownies. But if you send in some home-baked banana bread with chocolate chips, you better believe it's going home with them or. I was the child, not the parent, but when I was at school I got accused of being involved in a fight that ended with a badly broken leg. In reality I was on the other side of the school. But my deputy head tried forcing me to confess that I broke the kid's leg by insisting that they were witnesses to the event. I get home. Tell my mum what happened and she then tells me that when my mum asked if there were any witnesses, the deputy head said that there weren't. When my son was in 3rd grade, the cafeteria published the month's lunch menu 1 month with a piece of clip art placed over the G in grape juice to make it say rape juice. The principal couldn't quite explain how an accident like that happens. Not a parent. But I was the student. In celebration of Black History Month, my school served fried chicken, cornbread, watermelon, and grape soda for lunch. This was not a whitewash school, we were very diverse. About a quarter of the students and teachers were black, including the vice principal. This was also not in the 60s, this was 2013. In my 6th grade science class, after we took a test, I was comparing mine to the kid next to me and noticed she marked a question on mine wrong and his right. It was a multiple choice test, so she obviously just made a grading error. I went and asked her about it and she said, "What do you want me to do about it? Lower his grade? That's not fair, like what, BTCH raise my grade, you are the one who made a mistake." This is the same teacher that gave us a true or false test and all the answers were true. Afterwards she said, "Why would you have any reason to think they were false? Like it's a true or false test, not a true test." Completely unrelated. But my friend is in a faith-based drug rehab. They made a new rule that no one can have their own nail clippers. They have to rent one from the office that everyone shares. They also aren't required to wear masks and they work with the public. They literally believe that prayer keeps the virus away. Mike Pence style. A few years after I graduated from high school, there was a scandal involving 2 students and their families. The scandal? The 2 students went to a gun range with their families and took pictures at said range. School found out and suspended them for weapon possession as if it was the underage kids that owned the guns and not the parents. Absolute morons at school district. Happened to me in 7th grade. I was trying to find where I saved the documents for an assignment. Found out that students had access to folders that they probably shouldn't. Showed my teacher. She was convinced I hacked the school. They got the police involved. I had to talk to an expert for a group of grown-ass adults to believe me. Still got 3 days of suspension. My parents thought it was hilarious how incompetent the entire school district was with technology. I was in special ed all my life. For learning disabilities and speech problems. I should also mention I struggled with reading, spelling and writing a lot. It wasn't until 8th grade that it was discovered I had dyslexia. My mom had kept trying to get me tested. Teachers always said I didn't have the symptoms of dyslexia. It wasn't until she mentioned almost all my first cousins have dyslexia that they finally decided to test me. I have almost all the symptoms of dyslexia. I was able to leave special ed in the 10th grade. And I love reading now. They fired a teacher who used the word booty at a performance. This was an after-school program the teacher did on her own time without any money from the school. She taught kids grades 4-6 to juggle and dance and then they performed for the parents. She said on the mic, "Come on kids. Shaky that booty." Which apparently offended some dumbers. The next day she was fired. It was so sad. Our middle school outright banned all skulls. You could be wearing a Pirates of the Caribbean shirt and they would still send you to the office. When they made me a student rep, I got the chance to tell them it was a dumbass rule, politely of course, and they ended up allowing skulls again. Was bullied throughout my entire school life. Sometimes teachers. Sometimes classmates. It was awful. At one point my class teacher said that I'm the problem and that I destroy the whole community of her class. When I left for another school, it became a free-for-all. Because they lost their common punching bag. It got so chaotic that the entire class had to be divided among other classes. This trend continued until I was finally done with this nightmare. Once a teacher called me a sociopath. Even though I'm so incredibly harmless. I never even fought back. I have no idea why she would call me that.